It was 2015. I drove a few hours from home into a dense forest to visit an abandoned fire lookout I'd been dying to explore. I'd read online that it was unstable and technically off-limits, but all the recent posts I could find were 3 years old. That made me nervous, but I went anyway. I parked in a shallow ditch off the road, shouldered a backpack with 2 days of gear, and set off. There wasn't a clear path, just a handheld satellite GPS and a lot of bushwhacking. 4 or 5 hours later, I finally crested a ridge and saw the lookout peeking above the trees. Up close, it looked weathered, but surprisingly sturdy. The ladder was metal and creaked as I climbed, but it held. From the top, I could see miles of uninterrupted forest. The lookout itself was small, maybe 150 square feet, one decaying bed in a corner and a rotted wooden desk against the windows. I set up my mattress and sleeping bag, heated a meal on my tiny stove, and watched the sun go down. That view at dusk was one of the best I'd ever seen. Roughly an hour after dark, I noticed a light moving between the trees far below, an orange, flickering glow. Not the harsh beam of a flashlight, but like a torch or a fire. It moved under the canopy, then disappeared. I waited. Half an hour later, I still hadn't seen it again. A little later, I noticed someone standing directly beneath the lookout in the clearing, looking up at me. I called out, "Hello?" They didn't answer, just looked up for several seconds, then lifted a hand as if to acknowledge me, before turning and walking back into the woods. No light, no sound. It was unsettling, but I told myself it was probably another hiker checking the building. I tried to sleep, but woke when I heard the ladder outside creak. Slow, steady steps climbing. Heart racing, I unzipped my bag, grabbed my pack, and went out to the ledge. The creaking intensified, then stopped. I peered over the railing. The ladder and the ground beneath were empty. Then, from behind me, a rush of footsteps pounded along the walkway. A dark figure flashed between the windows. I dropped to the ladder and scrambled down. Halfway down, I saw the person's head appear above me. I kept descending until I hit the forest floor. I don't know why I grabbed my pack, but I did. With my flashlight and GPS, I cut through the trees and found my way back to the road in my car. I drove away without looking back. Another time, I was camping by a remote lake, an old spot my dad used to take me to. There wasn't much of a trail and almost nobody ever showed up. On my second day, I found barefoot prints at the water's edge. They looked fresh and continued into the tree line. That was impossible. There was no easy access there and no reason for anyone to be barefoot. I went back to my campsite and kept scanning the shoreline all afternoon. Nobody appeared. That night, I built a fire and saw 2 people approaching, one man and one woman. When they stepped into the firelight, the woman bolted back into the trees. The man, barefoot, stood for a moment and then walked away without saying anything. I packed up and left immediately. Walking back to my truck, I kept hearing distant running, short, sporadic bursts of footsteps that sounded like someone following me, then sprinting off. I eventually made it to my truck and drove away safe but shaken. Another incident happened while I was living out of a small camper van in Washington. I'd pulled off a dirt trail and parked in a secluded circle of trees. Around 10 or 11 p.m. in a downpour, I thought I saw a light flash at the van window. It switched off as if someone had killed it. Later, I heard something running and knocking at my side door, plastic bending, heavy knocks, followed by a voice whispering commands and pretending to be law enforcement. I kept quiet, then decided to drive. As I started the engine, 2 figures sprinted toward the van. I drove off, and later learned the county had no officers in that area that night. I never found out who the people were, if they were local, lost, dangerous, or even alive. I stopped returning to those spots. I still think about those nights, the creak of the ladder, the barefoot prints, the way 2 strangers could appear in silence and then vanish back into the trees. I'm older now, and I prefer sleeping under the stars where there are other people around.